Cooper are a bit of an impasse, I would say, as far as a contract extension. We're going to talk about it. Your latest Locked On Browns starts now.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends, your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound, LGB, and the LOB, the Locked On Browns podcast, brought to the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am your host, Jeff Lloyd, and I appreciate all of you who make Locked On Browns your first listen every single day. If you are not an everydayer, I suggest you become an everydayer. Subscribe to Locked On Browns YouTube channel. Do not miss a thing. Show is always available. It is always free wherever you get your podcasts. Now, as we all know, Amari Cooper is in the final year of his current contract that was negotiated by the Dallas Cowboys, not the Cleveland Browns. We all know the Cleveland Browns made a tremendous move a couple off seasons ago, sending a 5th-round pick, taking on Amari Cooper and his contract. Obviously, Amari Cooper and his camp are looking for an extension. The wide receiver market is getting paid and paid well as the cap keeps going up and up. Ideally, players and the money they're taking home is getting higher and higher. Amari just turned 30 on July 17th. Certainly wants to maybe try to cash in one more time before you get to that odd spot in your career and age at the wide receiver position where, your guaranteed money consists of one season. You look at some weird things. Like Odell Beckham Jr. got $14.5 million last year from the Baltimore Ravens. Certainly did not earn the $14.5 million he was paid. Coop on the hook this year for certainly a lot more money than that. Certainly looking for more money, if not more guaranteed money. If he's getting 20 and change this year, he would probably feel he would like at least 40, if not more, over the next couple of years. And that's okay. The issue for the Cleveland Browns, though, is the Cleveland Browns seem to only be invested in this season, which will be Amari Cooper's age 30 season, his 10th season in the NFL. And the Browns have no issue as far as compensating Amari Cooper for the 2025 season, which would be his age 31 season, 11th season in the NFL. We all know the life expectancy at skill positions. That 30 number when it comes to wide receivers seems to be such a scary number. A lot of guys, you start to see a significant decline when we get to that age. And look, there's always anomalies, but when you are a front office that is so analytically driven, you're not paying for the anomaly. You're paying for what has been the proof to this point. And wide receivers seem to tend to tear down. The statistics seem to go down once you hit that number of 30. So certainly extending him to age 31 season on the Browns is probably extending an olive branch. Probably not wanting to gamble on age 32 season is probably understandable under an analytic lens. Amari, and it's been nothing but a win bringing Amari in here the way the Browns did. And, you have to look at the things that, Amari succeeded with Jacoby Brissett and then Deshaun Watson in 2022 and 2023. It was with Deshaun Watson. It was with P.J. Walker. It was with Dorian Thompson-Robinson, Joe Flacco. Amari has been not dealt the greatest quarterback hand in his time here in Cleveland, but nevertheless has put up 2 incredible statistical seasons for the Browns. Numbers last season certainly would have been even higher if not for the injury sustained in that amazing game against the Houston Texans and missing the final 2 regular season games. Certainly, Amari probably would have been knocking on the door of 1,400 yards and probably would have been in even a more stronger stance to command the money in years that he's currently looking for. For the Browns, it was a great move getting Amari in here, giving up only a 5th-round pick, taking on the contract, taking on Amari Cooper, then restructuring the contract, giving themselves a lot more flexibility as far as handling other roster needs, turning most of all of his money into a signing bonus, which allowed them to go out and certainly acquire other players that were able to help, certainly at other positions. But the last thing you want to do after you made something that turned out to be such a great move, such a positive move, such a winning move, like the Browns did when they first acquired Amari Cooper, is to then turn it into a move that maybe turns badly or doesn't work out. And I think that's what the Cleveland Browns feel would be the expectation if they committed to Amari Cooper after 2025. Then it might be a situation where you have a guy who's making a lot of money, maybe not giving you as much statistical production anymore, or God forbid, and we'll get to this a little bit more in segment 2, there are a lot of younger guys who maybe by that point could climb the ladder, and now you have a guy who is making a large amount of money, therefore feels like he deserves targets, deserves reps, deserves to be on the field, but maybe the talent dwindled, and it gave the chance for these younger guys that are on the roster to possibly pass him, certainly younger guys that aren't even on the Cleveland Browns to this point. So it certainly makes for a difficult juxtaposition for both parties. Amari certainly deserves more money, certainly deserves an extension. There's no question about that. What he has done the last 2 years, best 2 years consecutive for a Cleveland Browns wide receiver in the team's history. It's fair. He's totally within his right to ask for more money. And certainly, as I mentioned a couple of times, Amari Cooper looks at his teammate, his friend, Nick Chubb, and says, well, Nick didn't get this done last offseason, went out and played. We all know the ultimate sacrifice and the ultimate, devastation that happened to Nick Chubb. And now how he is in this weird, year with the Browns where he does have a contract, but so much is contingent on him playing and performing and whether or not he can even meet some of those goals. Certainly puts a player like Nick Chubb in a difficult spot. Amari Cooper does not want to end up in that spot, next March, next April. He does not want to be without a contract, possibly coming off something very, very negative. So it's a really, really difficult slope here because you have a front office, and look, they are a bottom line front office. I know everybody views this Cleveland Browns office the way they do, but they have their bottom lines, and most of the time they just stick to it. They're not one that's going to waver, and they're not going to spend money that they don't think is going to come back and basically work out for them. It is just not what they do. And it's not about, it's nowhere near, an issue of player versus team versus player. It's about what Amari Cooper's camp thinks is right, and it's about what the Cleveland Browns think is right. And certainly both parties at this point are differing on their views on this. So with Amari and, still probably about a month and change before training camp opens on July 22nd. Somebody could falter, somebody could waver, but it is a sticking point to this right now. The Cleveland Browns most likely want to give Amari Cooper a 2-year contract extension with money guaranteed for 2025. And basically that 2026 of that 2-year option would basically just be, a time for either they to stay together one more year or to part their ways. This is going to go on probably for a little while. For Amari, you certainly hope he gets what's his, but you have to understand that the Cleveland Browns do have a bottom line. And I don't want to hear this, the salary cap is a myth. It's not a question whether you think the salary cap is a myth. It's about what is right and what is wrong and making decisions on what you think is best for your franchise. And that's the spot the Cleveland Browns are in right now. We're going to continue here. Your latest Locked On Browns. Appreciate everybody for being along for the ride. Summertime means baseball. The NBA Finals are a wrap. The NHL Stanley Cup is almost over, but you can bet anything and everything on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 you can use to bet on everything from the Finals MVP to who's going to hit one out of the park. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and add a big win to your summer bucket list. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Your latest Locked On Browns continues. We are certainly talking the Amari Cooper contract extension and the fact that the Cleveland Browns and Amari, I don't want to say it's an impasse. I don't want to say the negotiations are over. And his ball is probably kind of here in Amari Cooper's court right now as far as do you take what the Browns are offering and then basically shut them up by going out and putting together a great 2024 season, which is certainly something that, Amari Cooper could possibly do this year. But if you think about this, and with the Browns making the acquisition of Amari Cooper 3 off seasons ago, but now you look what they've done since that point. That year they drafted wide receiver David Bell out of Purdue. The next offseason, They obviously drafted Elijah Moore. I'm sorry, they traded for Elijah Moore. Then in the exchange of draft picks, we took one of those draft picks and went ahead and drafted Cedric Tillman out of Tennessee. This past offseason, a move that I've been waiting for a while for the Cleveland Browns to try to pull the trigger on, they go out and they acquire Jerry Jeudy. Then in the draft, they go and draft Jamari Thrash. So since Amari Cooper was acquired, that same offseason, they brought in a rookie wide receiver. The next offseason, they brought in, at the time, what was a third-year wide receiver and drafted another. This year, they went out and brought in a fifth-year wide receiver and drafted another. So they have basically acquired 5 receivers who will be on this roster since they made the acquisition of Amari Cooper. Tells me we probably should have seen this coming. If the Browns had every intention to sign Amari to a to a full, long-term deal, they could have done it then. Could have done it last offseason. Could have certainly done it by now. But yet they continue to stockpile young talent in the wide receiver room. That being said, Jerry Jeudy is not Amari Cooper yet. Elijah Moore is not Amari Cooper. Cedric Tillman is not Amari Cooper. David Bell is not Amari Cooper. Jamari Thrash is not Amari Cooper. It's fair to say that on all 5 of them. But when we're talking about contract extensions, future money, future production from the Browns wide receiver room, we can't guarantee that, in we don't even know if in 2024 Amari Cooper could be the leading receiver for this team. Jerry Jeudy has a lot of promise, has a lot of experience, needed a better situation. Amari Cooper could get outperformed in 2020. in 2024. Jerry Jeudy already has his extension. Amari Cooper does not. So that kind of tells you that Browns, maybe it's not Jerry Jeudy who, could become the one that Amari Cooper is. The Browns do now have a whole bunch of draft assets. Wherever you think they possibly could be drafting in the 2025 NFL draft, they certainly have the ammunition to move up. If there was a receiver they just thought was the guy, and now they have their brand new number 1 in Cleveland. So with all of this talent that is brought in, it certainly, makes the Browns' stance as far as, what they want to commit to Amari Cooper understandable. They are, a good franchise is already looking ahead, is already looking a season to 2 seasons ahead, 3 seasons ahead. You don't make these decisions when it comes down to deadline. You're going to, franchises and front offices, they'll lose those, basically bargaining wars every single time. You try to get out in front of things, especially like they did with Jerry Jeudy. They tried to get out in front of it and get younger. And, Jerry Jeudy signed an extension that now, with each wide receiver that signs, it looks better and better to the Cleveland Browns for the money that they have on the Jerry Jeudy contract. Now, you have Elijah Moore here who's in his final year. And for Elijah, he's, probably wide receiver 2B or just a bona fide number 3 wide receiver. Certainly, Elijah himself is in the odd position where he is playing in a final year of his contract as well. So the Browns have the 2 of them. They have a bunch of young kids. Only one who has true security certainly is Jerry Jeudy. Cedric Tillman still has 3 years on his deal. Jamari Thrash, obviously 4. David Bell is here for this season, and it would still be under contract for 2025 as well. So you see that the Browns, if they want to play hardball here with Amari, they can. And maybe they didn't think Amari was going to be as successful as he was these first 2 years, and that's why they kept investing into the room. And you have no idea. All the players progress or start to flame out differently. There's no, way to just look at it and say, okay, well, by the time he's 32, he's done. Or, there's guys who go to 35, or some guys are burnt out by 27. There's just no rhyme or reason for it. Amari Cooper is a fully healthy player. He's never sustained any major injuries this time in the NFL, which certainly bodes well for his bargaining stance. But he is in this spot, where there's a room of young guys that, he's kind of grooming, he's kind of leading, setting the example, teaching, all of those things. And it truly is the case, but it almost can be done to, Amari's own detriment. Whereas Amari is basically, helping this room collectively get better, which could lead to his exit from this franchise maybe earlier than he chooses to. Interesting, right? So with the kids developing and, Amari sitting out of minicamp, which was totally fair from his standpoint. I totally understand it. And again, it was nothing, there's no maliciousness to it, but it's certainly what it do. It gave opportunities for Cedric Tillman. It gave opportunities for Elijah Moore. It gave opportunities for Jamari Thrash. Jerry Jeudy did some nice things in the OTAs, was not a part of mini camps, a little bit dinged up and kind of the side. So the Browns, you try to play this where you have this wide receiver room as good as you possibly can for 2024. But you're certainly looking at 25. You're certainly looking at 26. And, the Browns obviously feel that, after 2025, they don't maybe want to gamble on Amari Cooper, or at least, they don't agree with, whatever number the Amari Cooper camp wants for 25, but also for 26, because this is about guaranteed money. That is exactly what it's about. And I told you, the Browns have zero issue committing probably even more money to Amari Cooper in 2025 than they have committed to him in 2024. They don't want to go beyond that. It's a really, really, difficult stance. Again, we have more than a month before the Cleveland Browns report for training camp and, make their way on down to West Virginia. So this is going to continue. This is going to be a talking point here until we get a resolution one way or the other. Do I know what will happen come July 22nd? I don't. I will certainly speculate about it in segment 3. But the Browns have basically covered themselves, for 2024 and certainly for 2025. If there's not a way to get something done, and Amari Cooper does find a way that nothing gets done and he plays as a true, lame duck on his 2024 contract and then makes his way to free agency in 2025, that's his right. The Browns have their right. Again, it's, stalemate, impasse, whatever you want to call it. Questions of, of course, who's going to blink first, that type of thing. But again, this is something that's going to go on until we get a resolution. The Browns do their business correctly. They handle their business like professionals. Amari Cooper has been nothing but a class individual in his time in the NFL. So I don't know how much more we're going to hear about this until maybe we get an ultimate resolution, but it is not done yet by any means whatsoever. We're going to continue your latest Locked On Browns. Appreciate y'all. Your latest Locked On Browns continues. I'm your host, Jeff Lloyd. Appreciate all of you who make Locked On Browns your first listen every single day. The everyday crowd keeps growing. The best way to join is by subscribing to the YouTube channel, of course, and the show is always available. It is always free wherever you get your podcasts. Talking a little bit here as far as, the Amari Cooper contract extension situation. Browns really only want to commit to beyond from 2024 to 2025. They do not want to commit any further. Amari is probably looking for a little bit more longer term security than that. It's really, really difficult from Amari's camp to expect an NFL team to commit to a wide receiver from year 32 on. So all variables, all understandable from both parties involved. Will there be an impasse by July 22nd? I think if there's an impasse by July 22nd, it's going to be because Amari Cooper's camp blinked. If I'm Amari Cooper and the Browns are offering me $23 million for the season 2025 guaranteed, maybe 2026 exists on paper, but it's basically as flimsy as a card house. If I'm Amari Cooper, I'd take it because I have guaranteed money coming to me to 2025. So that gives me a chance in 2024 and then certainly a chance again in 2025 to prove my worth further, if not with the Cleveland Browns, then with someone else within the NFL. I've seen a lot of people trying to bring up trade Amari Cooper to the 49ers and for X draft choice and Brandon Ayuk. I'm in, but it takes two to tango, guys. Some of these scenarios you're putting out there, you have to ask yourself the question of why are the San Francisco 49ers committing to said deal? The issue with San Francisco is as good as Brandon Ayuk is, you've already got Debo guaranteed. You'd get a better return trading Brandon Ayuk than you would Debo. Debo doubles for God forbid something happens to Christian McCaffrey. Debo Samuel can go do a lot of Christian McCaffrey stuff as well. Kittle's already making his money. Ricky Pearsall, I know a lot of people are bringing up that name, and it's great, and he's a rookie, and Ricky Pearsall might go in there, and I think he's going to be a really, really good player, but you can't base anything yet. For the Browns, would you make that move for Brandon Ayuk? Question is, you're paying going to pay 2 wide receivers now it's a boatload of money. Jerry Jeudy's making really good money. Brandon Ayuk would make fantastic money. And what does Amari do in San Francisco? Kind of Debo and Kittle and McCaffrey are kind of like, it's weird to say who's option 1, who's option 2 with San Francisco, because the game plan fluctuates obviously each and every week for whatever opponent they have. Amari would fit in there, but I don't see how the 49ers, if they don't want to pay Brandon Ayuk, why in the world are the San Francisco 49ers going to pay Amari Cooper? I just don't see how that works. They're going to extend him at 30 years old. They've got a bunch of young talent there. It's just that dog, they were saying that dog just doesn't hunt. I also see a lot of mentioning of maybe Brandon Ayuk to the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Browns aren't going to make a move just to stop somebody else. Yeah, I mean, do any of us want Brandon Ayuk in Pittsburgh? I don't think it's going to go much better for him. I think he'd be much better off with Brock Purdy than he would be with either Justin Fields and Russell Wilson and no future at the quarterback position in Pittsburgh. Why are you going to commit to that if you're Brandon Ayuk? Why are you going to sign up long-term for that if you're Brandon Ayuk? Totally makes a ton of sense. I do. So the Browns just don't make the move to say, oh no, Pittsburgh might get him. So it's a very, very, very tricky situation. And for the Browns, it's tough because this is a player that obviously has been nothing but a solid citizen since he's been here. He has produced. He's played dinged up. You guys remember before he even got hurt against Houston last year, we had the issues week 2 against Pittsburgh Steelers where, he was still working through scar tissue in his groin. We didn't even know if he was going to play in that Monday night game, put up for like 7 for 90. There was rib injuries. There was a head injury. And that was before even, the injury against Houston, which, cost him the rest of the regular season and certainly had him out there in the playoff game, not at 100%. So, you never get any boringness this time of year. There's always going to be storylines. That is why the NFL is certainly a 24/7, 365-day business, as the Browns are now in this difficult spot. And I think if this contract negotiation was going better than the way it's perceived in the media, it would have been done by now. You don't get a lot of negative. You don't get a lot of, criticism the way the Browns are currently being run, which certainly makes for this type of contract extension and talks for a contract extension a not very volatile media point. Amari's a class guy. The Browns handle their business with class. A lot of other teams, a lot of other wide receivers, certainly this would be a bigger national story, would certainly be a bigger local story within whatever community it was. But you just have 2 parties in Cooper and his camp, certainly the Cleveland Browns and theirs, that just, it's just not the way they do things. They don't try to, they don't ever want to slight somebody in public. Cooper is not going to call out the organization. He was brought here. He had 2 fantastic years. He produced. Everybody knows what Amari has done here for the last 2 years. So, it continues. And, we're a month away or so and change from July 22nd. I don't think there's any way, even if Amari does not get any extension for 2025, or they don't agree to anything, that Amari does not sit out. And it's just not the type of guy Amari Cooper is. Amari Cooper will play this season. Maybe he doesn't do much in the summer, but I think he will be full guns a go come week 1, because look, he's not going to make any more money by not playing. It's only going to dispel the myth that maybe, he could be starting to rust, which there is no proof of. But, if you're not playing, and when you want an extension, everything comes down to one thing and one thing only. It comes down to statistical production. So we continue, this dance here between Amari and the Browns. The Browns have their stance. Amari has his. The Browns kind of have a backup plan in place, and certainly a backup plan for the future if this does not get done in accordance to what they feel is important to them. So it's just going to continue. There's been some talk, certainly the last couple of days. Just want to get to this real quick. Andrew Berry's done some media work, and he's certainly talking about Amari, and he's certainly talking about Nick, and talked about, Deshaun Watson being ahead of schedule. I think that was very much apparent during minicamp. Amari was out there. Deshaun was out there, and we were starting to see the ball rip. And I'm not just talking about, velocity, because, I think most of the balls he was probably throwing at close to max speed as he possibly could. But you're really starting to see the opening up and the deep ball, which is certainly the question. Look, a lot of guys will play within the NFL, and usually the ultimate test that we don't know whether or not the guys are injured is whether or not they can throw the deep ball. And stop calling it the bombs. We're not 7 years old. It's a 9 route. It's a fly route. Can we not call it a bomb, for God's sakes? So with Deshaun making that progression, and certainly, so much of this season is on Deshaun, and it was always going to be on Deshaun. It was going to be on Deshaun on 22, it was certainly on Deshaun at 23. It's certainly going to be on Deshaun at 24. People, it is such a results business. It is such an, instant gratification business that is the NFL. But to know that, basically Deshaun is getting close to 100% or is certainly ahead of schedule. Again, it was never about preparing Deshaun Watson for OTAs, preparing Deshaun Watson for minicamp. It was never about preparing Deshaun Watson for training camp. It is all about week one and the Dallas Cowboys. That is all that matters. Nothing more, nothing less. But it is good to hear positive signs that Deshaun is trending towards that. Amari Brown's got a contract to work out. Who's going to blink first? It's going to be interesting to see the way it plays out. Deshaun Watson progressing just the way the Browns thought he was going to, and even ahead of schedule. I am Jeff Lloyd, your host here at Locked On Browns. I appreciate everybody who makes Locked On Browns their first listen every single day. If you are not an everydayer, you should become one. They're a bunch of filthy animals, but they are my filthy animals. Subscribe to Locked On Browns YouTube channel. Become an everydayer yourself. The show is always available. It is always free wherever you get your podcasts. This has been your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound. LGB on ELOB. Let's go Browns.